I plead guests, if it's possible, to take place.
Sorry.
No.
All right, have you heard the expression herding cats?
Yes. Minuto. Please, please. E qua viene il tipico di orari, bisogna di poca cosa. No, no, tutta cosa. Chi? No, già ho parlato con il segretario. Oh, ci stanno due persone. Vabbè. Allora vorrei dare la parola al segretario della...
I would like to leave the floor to the General Secretary of the Pontifical Committee, Mr. Donato Mosella, so that the fourth panel may begin. Good morning. Coffee break was definitely enjoyable. We can now move on to the second part of the morning session. Our debate will focus on two fundamental rights, which have already been mentioned in other presentations. But we will zero into them more in detail. So, fundamental rights for children wherever they are born, the right to food, and this doesn't mean simply to feed oneself, but to have access to proper and nutritious food, supporting growth in the age of development, and the right to healthcare assistance, which means right to healthcare ever since you're born and access to the due care whenever it is necessary. So food, nutrition, healthcare, this underlies existence, and where they are denied or limited, there is no human dignity. Should this happen during childhood, an age that is sacred, should be sacred for everyone, well, that makes it even more unacceptable. Given the expertise you carry, you are very well aware of the problems of poverty, of hunger, of marginalization, these situations that affect far too many children across the world. We are all aware that the 2030 deadline is growing closer, and the goal to narrow inequalities between countries is still far from being achieved. Then again, we won't be stopping, we won't give in. We have to focus on the inequalities that affect the innocent, whether they deprive the essential, whether they cause distortions such as a surplus of food. We have undernourishment and child obesity. There are two different forms of malnutrition. They are both tell us that a whole lot of children are suffering. So today we have the opportunity of sharing expertise, knowledge, know-how to better address these situations and problems that deprive children of their future. So our committee is working on this. As Father Enzo said, we want to focus on the cultural elements too, to be this close to the world. I now leave the floor to Riccardo Paternò di Montecupo, Grand Chancellor of the Sovereign Order of Malta. Thank you very much. It is an honor for me to attend this summit convened by the Holy Father, which puts a problem, a dramatic problem at the center of the world debate, namely that of children, their need for protection and their need for education in this phase of their life. This morning we have listened to a number of speeches. We have heard about hybridization, technological hybridization. We've talked about schools. Senator Segre told us that the rights of the vulnerable are violated amid indifference, and that's a scourge. That definitely is a huge scourge. The chief economist of the World Food Programme asked a very subtle question. What's the cost of not dealing with children? Which becomes even more relevant because it's not just a moral issue. It's not just a moral thing that involves all of us. It is also an economic problem, oddly enough. Why do I say oddly? Because everyone thinks that if we take care of children, that will be costly. But as the chief economist of the WFP said, what is more costly is not dealing with them. And there are other problems aside from education, access to food and healthcare. We know that international law is being violated by everyone, basically, and these children are not being protected. So the situation is indeed complex. So the Order of Malta intends to deal with children, their birth, their nutrition, and possibly educating them in a balanced and healthy way. Our order has always been at the forefront in this regard. I will try to point out a few figures, some data that characterize our activity globally when it comes to these issues. But it is also important to make the most of this moment to make a global appeal as to the need to work more and more together to uphold these values. First of all, we make sure that children are born in a clinically sound environment. Since 1989 in Bethlehem, we have been running the Holy Family Hospital, and 1 year ago, the 100,000th child was born there. It's a highly specialized facility. So, being born in a proper situation is something we ensure in Benin, in Cameroon, in Cote d'Ivoire, Madagascar, and many more countries where roughly 15,000 children are born each year. Clearly, all this is not enough. We have a millennium-year-old history in ensuring and providing healthcare services. This goes for Africa, Asia, and in the Western world as well. We provide medicines, we provide medical care to children, and we do that in Europe as well, as I was saying. Now, when it comes to food, this is something that involves all of us. Since last summer, the Order of Malta has been closely cooperating with the Patriarch of Jerusalem, distributing in Gaza City foodstuffs, fresh food. Every 2 months, we help about 1,000 families a month, and we have handed out 100,000 tons in food. That is a huge effort on our part, and we will continue to do so until the end of the year. The Patriarchate of Jerusalem is clearly a key actor in this initiative, and we will also begin to offer. We also offer healthcare assistance in Gaza, for example. Children face serious physical healthcare-related issues, but also mental ones, which are very complex. So we have been taking care of in Ukraine and in Gaza, hopefully, even with children who have mental disorders, who are victims of these tragic situations, who have witnessed situations that nobody would ever want to witness. I would like to point out that we are living in a context where there's no room for hesitation. When I was looking at the figures, I truly was shocked. Today there are some 470 million children in the world. That accounts for 20% of all the children in the world who live in war-ravaged areas. In Gaza, apparently between 11,000 and 15,000 children were killed. That's an average of 40 children a day, considering how long the war has lasted, since 7th of October of 2023. So these figures speak for themselves. But there are more. Who will take care of these children? Who will make sure they have access to education? Living in a war theater means that your education process is disrupted. So who will deal with this? We, as a Christian community, and we, as the Order of Malta, we think that we should really join forces and do something together. Given the great help that the Catholic Church is giving, every single child should have access to medical care. Every single child should be protected against these brutal tragedies, such as people smuggling, exploitation, and so on. So hopefully we can truly spread the culture of life and family. So for all these reasons, I would like to stress once again the role of the Order of Malta. We are here, we are available to join in any initiative that can work in this regard. So I thank you for inviting me, and I thank the Holy Father.
Grazie. La parola.
Thank you. I'm giving the floor to the Deputy Prime Minister for Human Development and Minister of Health and Population of the Arab Republic of Egypt, Mr. Ghaffar.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, throughout all the holy books, children are placed at the core of moral and social responsibility. Their innocence, vulnerability, and boundless potential are safeguarded by divine teachings guiding humanity towards compassion and justice. In Christianity, and I'm quoting Matthew, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." In Judaism, "Defend the weak," and I'm quoting Sam, "Defend the weak and the fatherless, uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed." In Islam, and I'm quoting from the Holy Quran, "Whoever saves a life, it is as if they have saved all the humanity." It is with great pleasure and deep commitment that I stand before you today representing the Arab Republic of Egypt at this historic World Leaders Summit on Children's Rights. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to His Holiness Pope Francis for his unwavering moral leadership and for convening this vital dialogue. Children's rights are increasingly at risk, particularly in the context of humanitarian crisis. The world is witnessing unprecedented threats to the safety and well-being of children. Today, it is estimated that 400 million children, roughly 1 in 5, are living and fleeing from conflict zones. Many are being injured, killed, abducted, or sexually violated. Like all nations, Egypt recognizes that its future depends on its younger generation by prioritizing their health, well-being, and development, and ensuring their protection. Approximately 34% of Egypt's population is under the age of 15, exemplifying the critical need for strong policies supporting child welfare and health. One of our most ambitious endeavors is 100 Million Healthy Lives initiative that was launched in 2018. This effort has set a global benchmark in global health, where Egypt achieved the golden tier status in eradicating hepatitis C, hepatitis B, and malaria. This initiative embodies a transformative model of early detection, prevention, and intervention, particularly in pediatric health care. Preventable diseases should never be a cause of childhood suffering. Egypt's expanded the program of immunization to achieve over 95% coverage, and screening over 13 million school children for hepatitis C and conducting nearly 50 million nutritional assessments. In addition to hearing impairment initiative by screening 6 million infants, and expanding our services for mental health and expanding services for autism spectrum and spinal muscle dystrophy, and strengthening the newborn screening for congenital and genetic diseases, preventing severe health complications. Nutrition plays a fundamental role in the child's ability to thrive, given that nearly half of the global children fatalities under 5 are linked to undernutrition. And Egypt has adopted a comprehensive approach through the National Food and Nutrition Strategy and our school feeding initiative, reaching 12 million children, is improving learning outcomes and reducing micronutrient deficiencies and reinforcing the essential link between nutrition and cognitive development. In our global community, protecting children requires both universal commitment and respect for cultural values. While other traditions emphasizes family bonds and community care, modern challenges like gender controversies and digital risk poses grave concerns. Our collective priority must be safeguarding children's well-being through culturally sensitive approaches that respect traditional values and parental rights, ensuring they develop into healthy members of society without exposure to ideologies that conflict with their cultural heritage. Our commitment extends beyond the national border of Egypt. Egypt has upheld its humanitarian responsibility by ensuring that refugees and migrants' children receive the same health care and educational opportunities as Egyptian children. I'm here not as a witness from social media or from words of mouth. I'm here as an eyewitness in my capacity as a Minister of Health and Population in Egypt. At the Rafah border, amidst the carnage and apocalyptic destruction in Gaza, the chaos and devastation, we welcome thousands of Palestinian children from Gaza, tiny souls bearing unimaginable wounds, their lives traumatized forever. Many arrived in silence, their limbs lost, their eyes hollow, with grief far beyond their years. Among them was little Ahmed, just under 2 years old. His fragile body, maimed by indiscriminate bombardment, both legs and one arm gone. Lost his father and mother, arriving with his uncle in Egypt to receive treatment. He clung to life with the strength no child should ever need. Another heartbreaking devastation, the tiny infant from El Shifa Hospital, newborn, only days old, torn from their incubators when the hospital was bombed, gasping for warmth in the world that had already failed them. I held them with a heavy heart, knowing that no embrace could undo their suffering. Those beautiful souls will grow up without the love of their parents, without homes. How will they go to school, play in the playground, play sports? How can they stand idly by and let this happen to them? The world must act, and act now. Those children deserve the right to live in their hometown, They should be able to live there in peace, not forcibly displaced, and not as refugees, even temporary. These children are not just victims, they are the shattered innocence of our time, pleading for humanity to act before more tiny hands slip from their grasp. I want to leave you, as Nelson Mandela once said, let us reach out, and I'm quoting, let us reach out to the children, let us do whatever we can to support their fight to rise above their pain and suffering. We must remember that history will judge us by the difference we make in the everyday lives of children. And I thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I leave the floor to Kamil Garibi, President of GKSD Investment Holding Group. Thank you. Mr. Minister, ambassadors, distinguished guests, what can I say? I always begin with what God said. The children are the beauty of life. But I always find myself attending meetings, talking, listening, promising. What are promises if we do not put them to good use? The problem isn't about helping children randomly or helping every now and then, helping them find food. We must address the problem at its roots. Why do we have these problems? Why are we facing these problems? Whether you're a Christian, a Jew, a Muslim, that does not matter. It is the human being that matters. We were all born into this world to be treated with equality. There is a big problem, a big real problem. I'm speaking in my capacity of the chair of 161 hospitals across the world. We build hospitals for free. We offer training free of charge. This is humanitarian activity, but it's just a drop in the ocean. It really is nothing. It hurts my heart to listen to all these speeches. They're so beautiful. We meet, we have a coffee, we exchange business cards, and then once we leave, what do we actually do? Nothing. We actually forget. Everyone forgets what we've been talking about. So there's no better place than this spiritual venue with the support of the Holy Father, who once said we must help the children. Help children. They are the beauty of life. We must do something. Picture a disease. Imagine a disease. Cardiovascular diseases are the first cause of death in the world, with 18.5 million deaths a year, accounting for 80% of deaths in developing countries. 80%. In Africa, the situation is even worse. Only 20% of the population has access to basic health care, and 5% to cardiology services, to heart surgery. 330,000 cases in Africa, only 8% cured. These are just figures. I'm African. I'm from Tunisia. It doesn't matter whether you're Italian, Swiss. It doesn't matter. I was born in Africa. I was born in a beautiful country, in a beautiful place, where God has given me the opportunity to travel the world, to get to know people, and this is a huge gift from God. And I would like to add something. All the rich in the world, rich people, rich countries, if they only care about military spending, well, if that weren't so, if we were to help the poor more, it would be a lot better. So I really urge every one of you, once we leave, to truly get something done, driven by their heart. So something that you will be remembered for when you no longer inhabit this world. Thank you.
Grazie. Grazie.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the appeal to do something. And now, Nouraya Abdul Majid, coordinator of the DREAM project in Mozambique. You have the floor, sir.
Buongiorno a tutti.
Good morning, everybody. I come from Mozambique, one of the 10 poorest countries in the world. Our population is young and rural, and 46% of the population is less than 15 years of age. In the last few years, the country had 2 periods of drought due to El Nino, which had a negative impact on agricultural production and on household livelihoods. Child malnutrition is a major public health concern. Stunting among children under 5 is very common, and this has remained very common over the past decades. 41% of children were stunted in 2003, 43% in 2011, and again 42.4% in 2021. Moreover, anemia affects the vast majority of young children, reaching 69% among those aged between 6 months and 5 years. Faced with this worrying picture, it has become essential to implement effective strategies to counter these difficulties and offer Mozambican children a healthier future. It is in the context that the DREAM program was born, committed to providing free, high-quality medical treatment, combining nutritional, medical, and social assistance to break this cycle of vulnerability. I am a doctor and have been working with the community of Sant'Egidio in the DREAM centers in Mozambique for over 20 years. The DREAM program offers treatment for HIV in adults and children, as well as providing care for other chronic diseases such as diabetes, hypertension, and epilepsy. It also works to prevent malnutrition, malaria, and cervical cancer. Currently, the DREAM program cares for more than 500,000 people and is active in 10 African countries, with 50 clinical centers adopting its model and 28 molecular biology laboratories built and equipped. In 2002, when I started working with Sant'Egidio, more than 450,000 children in Mozambique were orphaned due to HIV. While in Western countries, the disease was already treatable, and mother-to-child transmission was largely avoidable by 1996. HIV treatment began in Mozambique in 2002, thanks to the DREAM program, in response to the silent cry of children born HIV positive to HIV infected mothers. These children, condemned to HIV from birth, had a high risk of dying by 2 years of age, whereas in Europe and the United States, effective treatment had already existed since 1996. This injustice prompted us to find a solution that not only offered medication, but also guaranteed a future for these children, breaking the cycle of infection and giving hope to new generations. Before the implementation of the vertical transmission prevention program, infants of HIV-positive mothers had a 25% chance of contracting the virus during birth or breastfeeding. Considering a high number of children per woman, this meant that many babies were born infected with HIV and risked dying, a true silent slaughter. For this reason, DREAM started the vertical transmission prevention program, aiming to reduce HIV infection from mother to child, always focusing on quality and excellence of services. Thanks to this program, today we have delivered more than 150,000 healthy babies to HIV-positive mothers across the continent. The birth of a healthy child is an experience of great joy for an HIV-positive mother, a true miracle. There is nothing worse for a mother than to see her child sick, knowing that she herself has transmitted the virus to him or her. Moreover, the community of Sant'Egidio also wanted to address the major issue of child malnutrition and has set up 2 nutrition centers in very poor neighborhoods in Mozambique, where it provides meals to some 1,000 needy malnourished children every day. Similar centers have also been opened in Malawi. In addition to nutrition, these centers also function as kindergartens for preschool children, providing a safe and educational environment. Here, the children receive not only nutritious meals, but also basic education with educational activities that help them develop cognitive and social skills. Educators teach them the importance of hygiene, living together, and learning, preparing the little ones for a better academic future. In addition, these centers provide a place of protection and shelter for many vulnerable children, giving them an essential support as they grow up. These children are accompanied in their growth until as teenagers. They are involved in social activities to help the poorest in their neighborhoods. This is a true inclusion empowerment work, making these children who live in poor neighborhoods and are often at risk of food insecurity real protagonists in their lives and in the communities in which they live. Through this work with children, both in HIV treatment and in the fight against malnutrition, the serious issue of the ghost children not registered in the civil status system has emerged. Without a legal identity, these children have no basic rights. They cannot complete their studies or obtain documents or access essential services. They are children exposed to all kinds of exploitation. According to the 2017 official statistics, more than half of children under 5 in Mozambique are not registered in the civil status system. To address this reality, we initiated the BRAVO program in Mozambique and other African countries, promoting birth registration of invisible children. As a result of this effort, we've been able to register more than 5 million children across Africa, providing them with an identity and a future outside of marginalization. In conclusion, let me say that a lot has been achieved in this more than 20 years, but there is still much to be done. And for me, it has been a great human professional adventure. We have worked together. We actually saved many lives, restored dignity, offered new opportunities to thousands of children and their families. However, the fight against HIV, malnutrition, and lack of access to essential services still remains a great challenge. Children have the right to a dignified life with universal access to health care, food security, and a healthy environment. We need the combined effort of all to continue to make progress. Every contribution, no matter how small, can make a difference. So there is still a long way to go, but we have learned that with commitment, solidarity, and collaboration, we can transform lives and ensure a better future for all children. Thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you very much. It's good to see what we do actually get done, and these are models that we can definitely replicate. I now leave the floor to Magnus McFarland Barrow, CEO of Merry Meals, OBE.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, 24 years ago, I had a conversation with a very hungry child. It was a conversation that changed my life and eventually changed the life of millions of others. I suppose that conversation is also the reason why I'm here today. The hungry child I had a conversation with was called Edward. He was 14 years of age, and I met him in a village in Malawi during a time of great hunger. He was 14 years of age, and along with his 5 younger siblings, he was sitting beside his mother, Emma, who was dying. All of them were very obviously malnourished. I asked Edward what his hopes and ambitions were for his life. He looked at me and he said, I'd like to have enough food to eat, and I'd like to be able to go to school one day. That was all of his ambition at 14 years of age. And his words ignited Mary's Meals, a global movement named after Mary, the mother of Jesus, which sets up free school meal programs through which locally produced food is cooked and served by local volunteers to the children of their own communities. Today, more than 2.5 million children eat Mary's Meals each school day in 16 of the world's poorest countries. We who are involved in this mission all over the world, from those who make donations to those who give their time freely to this work, we like to describe ourselves as servants of hope. We consistently see that the promise of this meal draws children into school, often for the first time, and keeps them there. On average, school enrolment increases by 25% after the introduction of the meals. As we speak, 71 million children like Edward are currently missing primary school because of poverty and hunger. They're being robbed of their future, their physical growth often permanently stunted, and their lack of education condemning them and their children to a life of poverty. In the last few years, after decades of progress, child hunger is on the rise in too many places across the world, driven by conflict, extreme weather, economic shocks, and the fact that many of the wealthiest nations in the world are reducing their aid budgets. Recently, I visited Tigray in Ethiopia, where all these factors have combined to cause a terrible hunger crisis, which has taken the lives of many children and forced hundreds of thousands to drop out of school. I spoke to a teacher in an empty school who told me that when there are no children left in the playground, there can be no hope left either. Maybe hope should be another right for every child. In the previous panel, we discussed the child's right to education. We can see clearly that for the poorest children, the right to food and the right to education are intrinsically linked, and that school meals can uphold both of these fundamental rights. And other important rights too. How many children in the world are being trafficked or their parents forced to make dangerous journeys across borders simply because they can't feed their children or enable their education? I believe that every child has a right to a daily meal in their place of education, and I believe that there's no good reason why we can't make and keep this promise to the world's poorest children. We have in the human family more than enough resource to do this. We in this room could make it happen. Today, it costs us on average $25 to serve one child with meals for a whole school year. To serve every child who is currently without school meals in the world's lowest income countries would cost just over $3 billion per year. In the UK alone, we spend 3 times that amount each year on our pet dogs. I have nothing against dogs, but this for me is a cause of great shame. This isn't about what's possible, it's about what we choose to make our priority. And school meal programs don't need to remain reliant on outside aid forever. In fact, by supporting the emergence of an educated young workforce, they play a key part in setting communities free from dependence on aid and creating economies that can eventually support their own provision of school meals. One of the best things about getting older now is to meet many young adults in countries like Malawi and Liberia who say, you know, without the meals, I never would have gone to school. I might not even be alive today. And they're in paid employment, or they've started businesses, or improved their family farms, simply because they can read and write, and they're healthy. Wouldn't it be wonderful, in this year of Jubilee, if we accepted the invitation to be pilgrims of hope by making a promise to every child of a daily meal in their place of education? There could be no better way to help the world's poorest communities escape poverty, and no better way to uphold the right to hope for every child. Thank you.
Grazie.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And the right to hope. That is wonderful. I think we can go to the conclusion with Maximo Torrero, Chief Economist of the FAO. Please, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, and distinguished guests and colleagues. We need to understand that children are not just our future, they are also our present. Yet millions are trapped in the brutal grip of hunger and malnutrition, and their potential is broken before it has a chance to flourish. Even in an environment with extreme poverty, inequalities, but peace, we can do all what we have been hearing today, and we should. There is no excuse that we don't reduce inequalities, we don't reduce extreme poverty, because we are in peace. Here is where the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty, launched by the Brazilian G20 last year, and the support mechanism hosted in FAO, could make a real difference. We are focusing on a policy basket of best practices to achieve this and scale this up substantially. For example, doubling social protection in the next 5 years. And here is where I see everything I have been hearing up to now will be great to be part of this initiative so that we can bring all the best practices together to accelerate this process. We need to come up together to bring a machine of action coordinated with solid evidence so that we can create the change. But when a child grows up in a conflict-ridden area without access to electricity, clean water, or healthcare, getting an education and health becomes an almost impossible challenge. Health status is essential to have real access to food of our children. The absence of healthcare means treatable diseases go unchecked and hunger gets exacerbated, further disrupting our future learning. This is where we need to understand that the solution is to stop conflict. Even before we start getting exacerbation of climate, that will deepen the impacts and will create even more conflict in the future. The right to food is not a privilege. It is a fundamental human right recognized in Article 25 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And yet, we continue to fail the most vulnerable among us. The statistics that we have heard before are staggering. According to our latest publication of the state of food security and nutrition in the world, over 45 million children under 5 suffer from wasting, the deadliest form of malnutrition, while 149 million are stunted and their bodies and minds permanently impaired. The first 1,000 days of life from conception to a child's second birthday are critical. Without proper nutrition, these children face a lifetime of diminished opportunities, breaking this opportunity to this education that we're talking so much. Breastfeeding, one of the most effective interventions, must be protected and promoted. Hunger is more than an empty stomach. It is a thief. It robs children of their education, forcing them into labor to help their families survive. In conflict zones like Gaza and Sudan, this crisis is even more severe. Gaza's battered infrastructure has left families struggling to access food and healthcare, while Sudan's ongoing conflict has displaced millions, disrupted agricultural production, and severely affected food supply chains. Children in these regions are among the most vulnerable, often facing the compounding threats of malnutrition, poverty, and exploitation. We cannot accept this as a status quo. We need to place the right to food and children nutrition at the center of the global action. Through school feeding programs, we are not just providing meals, as it was mentioned before, we are keeping children in classrooms, reducing child labor, and breaking cycles of poverty. But again, let me repeat, that's when the schools are there. That's when the infrastructure is there. And when we have conflict, that's what is being destroyed. By promoting sustainable agri-food systems and nutrition-sensitive policy, we empower communities to build lasting resilience against hunger. The call to action is clear. Every child deserves to grow, learn, and thrive in a world free from hunger and exploitation. That is not charity, it is justice. So let us commit here and now to ensure that no child is left behind. Thank you.
Grazie. Padre Renzo, tabella di marcia rispettata.
Thank you, Father Renzo. We are on time, on schedule.
Buongiorno a tutti.
Good morning. We may now begin the 5th panel on the child's right to family, the fundamental role of families in supporting physical, emotional, and social growth of children. Eminences, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, I am pleased, very pleased to introduce and moderate this panel on the right of children to a family, a fundamental right, truly a fundamental right. It underlies a number of other rights of the child. Without a family, these other children's rights could never be enforced. If we think of children and their right to education, to healthcare, to food, to leisure, to freedom, to a healthy environment, we do so picturing them in a house together with their parents, their brothers and sisters, perhaps with their grandparents or their uncles and aunts. So if we associate the rights of children to their family, we do it because intuitively we realize that this is the basic fundamental institution that is required for the growth. Other institutions such as the church or the school can surely help. They contribute to the growth of children, while always, however, respecting the overarching role of the family. Sciences have shown that it is the very first years of one's life that are fundamental in terms of development, in terms of development of personality, and it is within the family that all these aspects are interwoven and are developed, especially during the early stages. The relationship with your mother, your father, shapes the very foundations of the individual and lays the foundations for life later on in adulthood, in terms at the social level and at the emotional level. In Amoris Laetitia, under item 172, Pope Francis says, I quote, "Every child has the right to receive the love of a mother and of a father. They are both necessary for his harmonious development." It's not just the love of the father, of the mother, taken separately. It's the love they can provide together, jointly, because that is the source of one's existence. That is the nest that welcomes the very pillars of the family. End of quotation. So a family is truly the fundamental right of every single child. This morning, many here have mentioned the importance of families in this process. How beautiful it would be if all institutions and society were to invest resources, energy, and time in promoting families. That's what our children deserve. I now leave the floor to our first speaker, Ms. Mariela Enoch, of the Board of Patrons of the World's Children's Hospitals. Over to you. Thank you. Listening to this morning's speeches at this exceptional summit, something we owe to Pope Francis and those who helped him organize it. This morning, listening to everything that was being said, I asked myself a question. We're living in a moment with great contradictions. We talk about children who have the right to families. How many families do not have children, however? And that especially goes for Western countries. We're lacking children because of a culture we're all heading towards. Politics, too, is heading towards this policy of selfishness. I have to be well. My family has to be well, regardless of the consequences. And then there is a social issue. Our social organization does not give us enough time to be dedicated to a certain number of children. And then there are a whole lot of children without a family. The other day I met with a group of youth, children who crossed the sea on a migrant boat. They were at a shelter center. We are teaching Italian to them. We're trying to shape them in order to have a job. But their roots have gone. When roots disappear, your sense of belonging, even to a family, disappears because they become nomads. They become some sort of nomads. But they should know what the value of a family is. But do they? This is the question I always ask myself. When doing my job, I always try to make sure that children come along, the migrants, with their families, never alone. Even with in the most troubled countries, I always want to try and keep families together. This is something that shouldn't be lost. So we face a challenging task. Firstly, we must educate adults. If we do not educate adults, we won't be able to make sure that children are welcomed and can find in the family the true venue of their growth. Secondly, we must form a great alliance. We can no longer talk separately about families, children, grandfathers. We need an extraordinary intergenerational alliance in order to find a way to truly live in the family. So, hope is the virtue that guides faith and charity. It strengthens our faith, but it must make our actions tangible. I've listened to some wonderful things, incredible things today. I've learned a whole lot today, but I too have a question for you. And now what? What will we do next? We have analyzed a whole lot of situations. Now it's time to turn to therapy to provide the cure. So I hope that these summits, these debates, can lead to actions that might be minor at first, symbolic, but these could be the seeds that we sow. And from these seeds, the respect for family, for children, for everyone can be born. Of all those that are part of the core we are born into. Last Sunday, the Gospel mentioned two parents that took a child to the temple. There was a grandfather, many other people. This is what family is. A real family, not an ideal family, a real tangible family, which we must help create, and we must convey a strong message. For me, what really matters is to create solidarity, an intergenerational solidarity. And the Pope says this quite often too. This is necessary because there are too many children who don't have a family and too many families that do not have children.
Well, thank you, Mariella, for your contribution. And now I immediately give the floor to Hans Michael Jepsen, member of the International Board of Advisors, China-Italy Philanthropy Forum. Sylvia.
Ladies and gentlemen, why is family so important? We had, of course, this morning a very moving testimony. What happens when you don't have families? And let me take the attention to Asia, where we've seen the most unprecedented development, particularly in China. My own family has been living in China for 4 generations, and I myself have been living there since over 40 years, witnessing probably the biggest historic transformation of a single country, China, from what has been a rural and certainly not wealthy to a semi-wealthy and certainly not rural, but very urbanized society. And what does that do to family life? What does it do to children? And I'd like to cast a bit of a light on that. Now, as we know, in the United Nations Convention, the right to family and family unity is very much enshrined. Now, how is that reflected? Now, these factors of emotional and spiritual home, to have a root to be deep-rooted. It says those who want to grow tall need deep roots. And I think we can see that religious faith, we heard that in different forms, is of course one deep roots, not to become spiritual nomads. But let me say this, in Asia, of course, we had hand-in-hand rapid urbanization and a rapid change in family structures, from village structures, and we heard from the minister that it takes a village to educate a child, and it's so true. But now we don't have these villages. We have high-rise urban structures, and that means loneliness. We have anonymous suburban megacities. Now, 200 million cities with over 1 million inhabitants, 65% of the country in China is now urbanized, and of course we have medical, we have education, etc., etc. But on the other hand, we also have a mental challenge. We have mental health issues. All of a sudden, we have family structures that are very different. We have urbanization effects, we have parental breakups, and we have single parent families, and we have single child families. We have the tremendous pressure on the single child having to take care of one day to their parents and grandparents alike. We have the dragon mothers, so-called. What does it do to children? How much time is there? How much family time is there under these terrific pressures? Now, this leads, no doubt, to one thing, and that is unlimited access very often to electronic media. This raises the question of social media and, of course, the consequences. In that environment, of course, one can only say, where is family time in these urban areas? Challenges also exist in the countryside for the same reason, because urbanization continues to draw talent and create demand for migrant labor, very often leading to parents not being available, grandparents having to take over, again, emotional hurdles. Confucian-inspired cultures, as you know, they very much have academic achievement as their main goal. So great expectations, too little family time, and certainly very often too much screen time at the same time. Now, as we know, the unwritten rules in life, including the wisdom that should come with knowledge, or better still, wisdom before knowledge, gets short-changed in that sort of environment. There are, however, support systems, and we've seen that in Hong Kong, where we have an issue with many people living in yet not really very well-to-do environments, and they have too little family time, and they have certainly too little space. The Order of Malta has set up a homework club where they take out people from these squalid conditions, do 3 hours homework with them so they can come home and have quality time with their parents without pressure. By the way, in Finland, that is very much the norm, and as a big surprise, they rank very high in the PISA Accord. So in other words, the right of a child to family also includes to take that undue pressure off their mind in order to really have quality time with their parents. These are only few examples. Of course, we have NGOs that do tremendous work, like the SOS Children's Villages in many countries in Asia, including India, including China. We have Orbis that cure preventable blindness with millions of children in China. We are part of that in very much connection with government. I have to say that China is, of course, a country where NGOs do have to work like government departments, and if they do so, they really can shift the needle. I myself have been privy to a number of these NGO activities, and it's a very educational thing to see how that can work hand in glove. And when you see that a place like Hong Kong has per capita the highest number of NGOs on earth, it tells us one thing, that people that have seen hardship are most prepared to also help others that are in dire straits. So is there hope? Yes, I think there is, and particularly when you engage individuals. We have in our company a CSR program, and it's very heartening to see how many individuals are signing up, wishing to participate themselves in helping out, in traveling, and in being part of corporate social responsibility activities. And indeed, these are also those people with the family values that really are rooted in a value set. So I think there is a message of hope, and when I see these many activities here around the table that are very humbling in comparison to certainly what I've been involved in, this is a very educational experience. Thank you very much, everybody.
Grazie, grazie Hans.
Thank you very much, Hans, for your contribution. We will now listen to Mr. Arsad Rashid, co-founder of the 5P Global Movement. Over to you. Thank you.
The world leaders of today and tomorrow. Speaking on behalf of myself, my country, Indonesia, and the global 5P movement, I would like to firstly express my sincere appreciation to Vatican for its inclusivity by inviting me, a Muslim businessman from Indonesia, to stand here and share this speech. A bunch of greetings in the beginning of my remark is a testament of appreciation to the cultural richness of people in Indonesia and the world. No words could describe how honored I am here to share some perspective and reflections on children's rights. Excellencies, allow me to call for the world's leaders to revisit the philosophical thinking that was and might have been founded in the past as a proof of how the foundation of life is not necessarily something new. Indeed, our ancestors and forebears have laid down guidance that is relevant to the present and future challenges. Many of these foundations are based beyond any religion groups and religious values. It's more universal and applicable to the general population at large and embedded in the societal life of many countries, in particular parts of the globe. Children, since they were born, are the source of happiness, not only for their parents, but also family as well as people surrounding them. Children were also a symbol of love and commitment for a long-lasting life together when two humans merge into one. However, in many undesirable situations, children are the most vulnerable part of the society in facing multiple issues at home, at school, and anywhere they go. Rather than being protected, many children now become the victims to the dangers and threats of the world. In a society lacking understanding, respect, and justice, children no longer live in safety and happiness. Instead, they are forced to adapt to an imperfect world with lack of compassion, hurt, defenseless, and without protections. It is crucial for us, for families, policymakers, and world leaders to recognize that a strong societal foundation is essential, not only to shape our nations, but also to create an environment in which our children will grow and learn. Excellencies, allow me to present the strong foundations of Indonesian that are introduced as Pancasila, previously this morning mentioned by Madam President Megawati Soekarno-Putri and introduced by her father, Mr. Sukarno, our first president. It consists of 5 principles and values that may place children's value in one small entity called family, and beyond to be a larger society. First, believe in God. The first principle emphasizes that it is important to uphold spiritual values and respect the rights to religion. We have seen that in many parts of the world, the freedom and space to practice one's faith are becoming more constrained and even unfairly regulated. This is even further exacerbated in some areas where one religion burns the faith of the others, or when nationalistic or economic values are placing religion in the margin in the pursuit of pragmatism. We believe that the principle to practice religion is inherent. We recognize that despite the diversity of faith that exists, even with a single family, all of them ultimately point to one shared belief, that is the faith in God. Second, just and civilized humanity. The second principle emphasizes the importance of respect for human rights. In times of conflicts and polarizations, we have witnessed an alarming rise in inhuman treatment of children worldwide. Many are forced to flee from their homes because of conflicts or migrate in search of better opportunities, leaving behind their homes and communities and sometimes identities. Excellencies, at home, children, often the beacon of hope and joy in family, are tragically subjected to violence and neglect. Economic circumstances force many to work in hazardous environments, robbing them of their childhood and compelling them to grow up too quickly. Family indeed serve as the first stage to showcase a just and civilized humanity. Third, unity. This third principle underlines the importance of unity amidst diversity. In times of growing polarization and societal discord, we have witnessed how ignorance can sow division among children. Many are thought to discriminate or embrace harmful values through racism and discriminations, eroding the innocence and open-mindedness that defines the essence of childhood. These are concerns that Your Holiness has outlined in the Istiqlal Declaration during his visit to Indonesia. It is a challenge that exists across all societies, but is particularly prominent in global and connected multicultural society with its rich culture and ethnic diversities. Our differences can either divide us or unite us. In Indonesia, our diversity serves as a modality for growth. We are united by the principle of Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, or unity in diversity. These principles and values have propelled us toward a harmonious life, even in our own family that is often so diverse. Family is the foundation of these values, and it is within the home that we first learn about the importance of diversity and respect for others, despite the differences. This is a lesson that we want to share with the world and generate to children worldwide. The fourth, consultation. The fourth precept teaches the importance of representation of voice and presence of the younger generations in the process of making a decision. When discussing policymaking, whether in government or in business, or even within a family, it is crucial to recognize that the impact isn't solely about the short-term gain. It is about laying the fundamental bricks for our children's futures. We have to always ask ourselves in our decisions whether the decision will ensure that our children will be better off. Family as the home of our children's, implementing this principle, showing children the importance of their voices. We must first appreciate and value our children's voices within our home. Amidst rapidly changing world, with technological disruption and innovation, it is crucial that we prioritize the interests and agendas of our children, ensuring that their voices are represented for every business and policy decision we make. After all, the futures belong to them. Fifth is social justice. The fifth precept focuses on welfare and social justice for all the people. Children may feel injustice in many cases. Across the world, the social and justice system have failed millions of children who are hoping for security and protection for their welfare and well-being. However, children who grew up in dysfunctional or broken families often experience grief, sadness, and vulnerability, which can hinder them from realizing their full potentials. Many struggle with feelings of blame, self-doubt, pessimism over their life. Moreover, their most fundamental rights often remain out of reach, as they often lack awareness of their rights, such as access to care, legal assistance, or the financial resources needed to secure their well-being and future. This is particularly true for vulnerable children, especially those in minority groups, disabilities, migrant children, and those in jails, detention centers, and many other places where their liberty is restricted. These five precepts are not just a series of words, but contain values that guide the life of the nation and state for our people. In short, these values of Pancasila have guided the people of Indonesia towards a harmonious life where children learn to respect and one another despite our differences in cultures or religion. The unity of the people and family prevails, all rooted in the foundation of justice. Lastly, to share an example, the government of Indonesia acknowledges the importance of proper nutrition for children as a fundamental human right. This year, our nation has implemented free nutritious meal program under President Prabowo Subianto for children in school, aimed to improve child nutrition, education, and this program reflects our values, what we call gotong royong, inclusive collaboration, where the government, private sectors, and the family stand on mutual cooperation to bring this initiative to success. This is a concrete investment of our future. It is our call, not only as leaders, but also as parents and families, to embed these values into our way of life. We hope the summit takeaway may reflect these values and shall be implemented further through stronger collective efforts for our children. Thank you very much.
Grazie.
Well, thank you very much, Arshad, for your contribution. And now we will conclude this round table with Federico Vecchioni, the CEO of Bonifiche Ferrarese Spa. You have the floor, sir. Well, thank you. I would like to thank the Holy Father and all of you for the many presentations that I had the opportunity to hear and share. Well, BF, the group I represent, is the largest agricultural company in Italy. We produce food in Italy. We cultivate about 15,000 hectares in this country, and we work with 1.5 farmers for the national production of food. Producing food, I believe, is the basis for good and tranquil childhood. BF grew by creating many Italian farming communities. When farming communities are revamped, whole territories are revamped. We did so. We are replicating this in Africa, in many countries of the world, and in many continents. So I fully agree with Mrs. Enoch and with others. At the end of this day, we have to actually say what each one of us is going to make. We're investing 1.5 million euros in modern farming, large farming communities in rural areas. We're doing so. We invest on education, on children. We do this because we are convinced that preserving the earth and enhancing the land coincides with the well-being of nature and population. So this project is an Italian project. It is a long-term project that for the first time sees an Italian actor in the Mediterranean with large issues such as the protection of people, the protection of new generations. We are doing so through a company that was created by the Bank of Italy and which was also acquired by national and international private investors, because we know that the challenge we have in front of us is not only related to profit making, because of course we believe in a lot of values of farming. So the highlight of our initiatives is family. The family within the framework of our model farms in many countries. It means that we are going to produce products, but we will foster education and development. This has to go on also through the merger with the manufacturing, healthcare companies of the countries of destination, is giving a future to many people who come to Italy without employment, and is doing. We want also to be able to train our generation and also the generation of people coming from abroad. So this is an for example, we know that these few farming communities will be able to give the right response to our expectations. BF wants to be a reference point in Italy, as we were able to do in the last 7 years. And we've been able to grow in a country that believes in agriculture. We want to do this in the Mediterranean area because there is great interest in our initiative. Thanks to the governments have given us the opportunity to create economic projects, but also development and cooperation projects for the development of these populations and the well-being of families, with a single objective, the personal growth and the growth of nature in the context where we operate. Thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you. Thank you, Federico, for your contribution. And so we conclude this roundtable that is very rich, was very rich. I would like to thank each one of you. I would like to thank each speaker for having given their contribution to the children's rights, especially the children's right to family. Now, Father Enzo, sorry because we're late, and now I give you the floor.
Grazie.
Thank you. We have some information for the afternoon sessions. We ask you to be here on time. So, if you can please be here by 2:50, we could start the afternoon session a little earlier. There are some shuttle buses that will take you to the restaurant, where we'll have a...
To bring you to the restaurant in the Vatican, downstairs when you go down. Thank you.
E dico sì che possono lasciare le cose qui.
Sì, perché tanti stanno andando.
Vai, dilli in inglese, dilli in inglese.
Please, you can...
Sorry, the shuttle bus is for the auditors, che sono per gli uditori, sono le navette, e potete lasciare le cose dove sono sul tavolo, ok? Anche per gli altri, per gli uditori potete lasciare tutte le cose sulle sedie. You can leave everything that's here on the chair, ok?
Le autorità, le macchine, le forze. Sì, così dobbiamo andare.
Ma quella roba lì la lasci? Cosa fa? Io 50 le lascio qua? Sì, sì. Tranquilla?
Yeah, many friends from yeah. So I'm also working for Peking University in China. Oh. Yeah, yeah.
Laudetur Jesus Christus, praised be Jesus Christ, and welcome to this live broadcast of Pope Francis's encounter with participants in the International Summit on Children's Rights. The audience is taking place today in the Clementine Hall of the Vatican Apostolic Palace. As we go to air, we see Pope Francis has just arrived in the Clementine Hall, and he is greeted by a pair of children who present a letter to the Holy Father, and as well as some hand drawings and colorings that they wrote. There are around 10 children. This is an event organized by the Vatican. The Holy Father is speaking to the children and offering them a little bit of candy for their troubles. And from wherever you are joining us, I'd like to welcome you to this live broadcast. Some of you may be joining us through various Vatican media channels, perhaps the Vatican News app or the Radio Vaticana app, the Vatican News web portal, or Vatican News English YouTube channel, or our Facebook live feed. My name is Devin Watkins, and I'll be providing the commentary and translation for this papal event. The letter that the 10 children just handed to Pope Francis, I can read it for you. It is, Dear Pope Francis, we write to you on behalf of children all over the earth. We want to thank you because you care for us and our future. You love us and you protect us, write the children. Thank you for all that you do for us. Thank you because you listen to our questions and take time to answer them. Like on World Children's Day that day, we learned so much, and it was good to hear and understand what you were telling us. That day, wrote the children, we understood that you want our help to change the world. The way it is now, you don't like it, and neither do we. Too many children suffer from hunger, from war, from different skin color, from environmental disasters. We would like a more just world, without divisions between peoples, between rich and poor, between young and old. A world that is also cleaner, where pollution does not destroy forests, foul the sea, and kill so many animals. We realize that it is more important to save the earth than to have a lot of money. We would like a world for everyone, no one excluded. A world where all children, but truly all, can grow up well, study, play, live peacefully. We want peace. We do not want to live in a world with war, say the children. War should not be made. It serves no purpose. It destroys, it kills, and makes everyone sadder. But this still some grown-ups do not know. Together with you, we want to cleanse the world of bad things, color it with friendship and respect, and help you build a beautiful future for everyone. Is it hard? Yes, but if you help us, it will get easier. Your children. Those were the words in the letter written by these children and presented to Pope Francis just now as he arrived in the Clementine Hall. This event is the International Summit on Children's Rights. It's bringing together many high-level exponents of various international agencies as well as government leaders. Among the dignitaries are Her Majesty Queen Rania Al Abdullah, the Queen of Jordan, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Ahmed Al-Tayeb, Sheikh Mosna bint Nasser, the President of the Qatar Foundation for Education and Science and Community Development. We see Queen Rania in the images, those of you following on television. She is seated in the center of this round table. Beside her is Antonio Tajani, the Italian Foreign Minister. Also present at this event are Mario Draghi, the former president of the European Central Bank and president of and former Italian Prime Minister.
Vi chiedo una cortesia per gli interventi, che se potete stare nei 4 minuti e mezzo.
And we're hearing an announcement here in the hall.
Permettiamo a tutti di poter esprimere la propria riflessione. Su questo vorrei che anche i moderatori dei panel siano molto severi ma misericordiosi.
We are hearing an announcement, and the moderator is inviting all of the participants to speak within their allotted 4 minutes. Other participants in this event include Paolo Gentiloni, the president of the UN Task Force for the debt crisis. Arif Hussein, the chief economist of the World Food Programme, UN agency whose headquarters are here in Rome. Grzegorz Karpiński, the Secretary of State for Poland, the Polish Secretary of State. And all of these will be on panels throughout this morning. Other participants include Miguel Benasayag, a philosopher and psychoanalyst, Marco Impagliazzo, the president of the Sant'Egidio community, which was founded here in Rome, Rabbi David Rosen, the special advisor for the Abrahamic Family House. And we see Pope Francis posing for a picture with the children gathered here as representatives of all the children around the world for whom this summit is being held. Continuing with our list of participants, we have Liliana Segre, the senator for the Italian Republic, Megawati Sukarnor Poturi, the member of the Zayed Award for Human Fraternity, Kamel Gribi, president of the GKSD Investment Holding Group, Nurjehan Abdul Majid, coordinator of the DREAM program in Mozambique, Magnus McFarlane Barrow, CEO of Mary's Meals, Ricardo Paterno de Montecupo, the Grand Chancellor of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, and Maximo Torrero, the chief economist of the Food and Agricultural Organization, the FAO, a UN agency also based here in Rome. Other participants in a later panel. The Holy Father is now coming into the Clementine Hall. He had been in the antechamber. We hear a round of applause for the Holy Father as he arrives. This event continues throughout the day. This morning, Pope Francis will be opening the session, opening the work. And after he concludes, we will conclude our broadcast. Our broadcast will continue, but we will conclude our ongoing commentary. At that point, the Holy Father will have left the room, and participants in the International Summit on Children's Rights will continue, and our colleagues will provide simultaneous translation when needed for this event throughout the day, which continues until this afternoon at around 4:45. Pope Francis will come back to the Clementine Hall and to conclude this event, likely urging all international organizations and government leaders to prioritize the needs of children, to provide hope for them. Pope Francis is currently making his way around the table, greeting everyone. You can hear various squeaks from the chairs scraping the floor as Pope Francis stops and greets each of the members of this of the delegates here at the summit. Among the other participants in this event, in this afternoon session, there will be a panel on protecting children from armed conflicts and ecological devastation. Participants in that panel include Al Gore, the founder and president of the Climate Reality Project, and a former candidate for president in the United States. Ahmed Nasser al-Raisi, the president of Interpol, the International Policing Agency, and Ibrahim Faltas, Father Ibrahim Faltas, who's the vicar of the Custody of the Holy See, which are the Franciscans in the Holy Land, whose task it is to provide spiritual guidance and oversee the holy sites in the Holy Land for the Latin Rite faithful of the Catholic Church. The delegates, this is the opening of the summit. However, delegates were treated to a private visit of the Sistine Chapel, which is part of the Vatican Museums, and they took that tour last night through the Vatican Museums. A little special treat for traveling all the way here to Rome for many of them, and to get to view the beauty of the Sistine Chapel in private. Pope Francis.
Allora iniziamo.
We may begin. Please take a seat. Pope Francis does love surprises. So he is going to surprise us.
Where do you want me?
Yes, here.
Oh, okay. Grazie.
You need your stuff, your things?
And let me give you this. Wait a minute. I may need that later.
Now we will begin section. Sì. Vai. Adesso. Lo dico? Sì, vai. Leggi il messaggio dei bambini. Iniziamo questa sessione dando la parola a Papa Francesco.
Leaving the floor to Pope Francis, we may begin this session. Good afternoon. This is a letter children have given me. I will read it out. Dear Pope Francis, we are writing to you on behalf of the children of the whole planet. We want to thank you because you worry about us and you think about our future, you love us and you protect us. Too many children are suffering from hunger because of the war, because the color of their skin is different, because of natural and environmental disasters. We would like a world that is more fair, with no divisions between peoples, between rich and poor, between young and elderly. A world that is cleaner, where the pollution does not destroy forests, does not pollute the sea and kill animals. We have realized that it is far more important to save the planet than having a lot of money. This was written by two small children. The sixth panel will be moderated by Cardinal Mauro Gambetti, Archbishop of St. Peter's Basilica and Vicar for the Vatican City. Thank you, Your Holiness. We have listened to a number of very interesting presentations and speeches. This panel is on the child's right to free time and leisure, which is no less important. This right is enshrined in the UN Convention on the Right of the Child, And it says a lot about the fact that we really want to take care of children and protect them, because this right to rest, to leisure, to free time, to cultural and artistic activities, this right actually enables the development of that personal and general well-being that a child needs and has the right to. Several studies clearly show that there are a number of benefits for the physical, cognitive, emotional, and social growth of a child deriving from leisure and free time. So we can immediately think of situations where these rights are clearly denied. I'm thinking of war-torn regions, regions struck by poverty. I mean, we've heard a lot about this. But the same can happen in educational environments where there is a strong emphasis on academic results, which greatly reduces the time for leisure and for relaxing. So even when it comes to the right to free time and leisure, again, we should stress the need to give children enough time. That is a very valuable thing. This panel features some authoritative speakers. This panel must go back to the roots of the meaning of the title of the panel itself. We must look at the true value of free time and leisure. Time that is free from violence, from exploitation, free from structured tasks, free from tasks that are too demanding, free from hyper-protection or pre-ordered ideas of protection. This is the path we should be pursuing. In the backdrop, there is a question that the speakers may answer. For a child, what is a space for free time, for leisure, for recreational activities, for sharing, for being on your own, for playing, for silence? These are some of the factors that fill with meaning the void of free time. This way, children can feel respected and duly considered, and not just objects that must meet expectations, more or less legitimate, or be the recipients of attentions and products of the economic system, of the modern consumeristic economic system. So now I am very pleased to leave the floor to Mr. Thomas Bach, President of the International Olympic Committee.
Your Holiness, Eminences, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. From the moment they take their first steps, children are naturally drawn to movement. Running, jumping and playing comes as instinctively as breathing. Sport and physical activity are not merely pastimes for children. They are expressions of their innate need for growth, self-discovery and connection. They are integral to personality development and critical to education. Through sport, children gain much more than health. They learn the principles of teamwork, discipline and fair play. They learn the importance of rules, mutual respect and the joy of striving together toward a shared goal. These universal values are woven into the fabric of sport. The Olympic movement has always championed these values. Our founder, Pierre de Coubertin, saw sport already as a way to make the world a better place through sport and its values. This is our mission until today. As an educator, Coubertin knew of this intrinsic link between sport and values. Through sport, we celebrate respect for the rules, respect for oneself, and respect for others. We build friendships that transcend any boundaries. We promote solidarity and peace. These fundamental Olympic values are values that we share with Christianity. Solidarity and peace in particular are shared pillars of faith and sport, as we have just recently experienced together at the Olympic Games Paris 2024, where we managed to have the athletes of all 206 national Olympic committees and the IOC refugee Olympic team competing peacefully and living at the same time peacefully together under one roof in the Olympic village. And we can congratulate one of the great supporters of this refugee Olympic team, the Holy Father, who was supporting it from the very beginning and was rewarded for his This is why the IOC has invested in innovative safeguarding measures with the assistance of AI, so that sport can truly be a force for good in every child's life. Allow me to share just two examples of how the IOC is living up to this responsibility. The Olympic Values Education Program reaches over 60 million children annually, embedding sport and physical education in curricula around the world. Last year in India alone, over 12 million children learned about excellence, friendship, and respect through sports-based school programs. Values that will guide them not only on the playing field, but throughout their lives. From Greece to Senegal, from Oman to Montenegro, from Italy to China, across the globe, Olympic values education programs are being adopted at national levels, giving access to sport and the Olympic values for every child. Another way we are walking the talk is through our Olympic Refuge Foundation, which brings sports to the world's most vulnerable children, those living in refugee camps and displaced communities. As a result of our work, more than 1 million young people on 4 continents have been given access to safe sport, which is so vital for their physical and mental well-being. Through sport, these children and youngsters find stability and belonging, moments of solidarity and peace in the midst of upheaval. All these initiatives underscore the unique role of sport in education and spreading universal values. Sport is so much more than just physical activity. Sport is health. Sport is inclusion. Sport is respect. Sport is empowerment. Sport is solidarity. Sport is peace. Today, thanks to the initiative of the Holy Father, we are reminded of our collective responsibility to build a better world for our children. To achieve this, we have to act faster, aim higher, be stronger, and we have to join hands. This is why I invite everyone present here today, whatever your mission in life, join hands with us to ensure that every child can enjoy their right to safe sport. In this spirit, let us live the Olympic motto, faster, higher, stronger, together. Thank you very much.
Grazie, dottor.
Well, thank you, Mr. Thomas. We receive your appeal, safe and secure sport. We want to have it all. So I would like to give the floor to the President of the Commission on Artificial Intelligence for Information, the Italian Commission, Mr. Paolo Benanti. Well, Holy Father, Eminences, distinguished guests, it's a great pleasure to be here with you.
As a Franciscan, but trained by Jesuits, I will have the privilege to make the ethicist, so to make question and run away before giving any kind of answer. And I'm focusing on 3 questions on what does it mean to be a kid in this digital age. First, what does it mean to be a children in this time? According to statistics, there is an average time spent on a display of 5 hours of every day for every children. And in the world, just to give some number, we have 8 billion, 100 million and counting people, with 6 billion, 100 million and counting mobile phone. But only 27 million of people are able to code, are able to understand the machine. That means that 99.75% of people are simple passive users of such kind of technology. And according to the global statistic, in a huge part of the global south, it's much more easy to find a technology such as a cellular tower than not a standard toilet. And according to UNESCO, it's much more easy in the global south to read a paper on a display than not on paper. So growing up today means growing up in a life that is also digital. And now the question becomes, is digital a place where is given free time and leisure? Well, this question has to face with some kind of elements of the digital space that are used to be called algorithms. And we know very well that the last 10 years of our economy grow thanks to what we call attention economy. Every algorithm that impacts the life of a kid is something that is trying to attract him to the display, to monetize the data and the amount of time spent on such device. And just probably every one of you is aware that city like New York City and other cities in the global United States sued the platform because such kind of algorithms are able to give an addictive behavior to the kids. More than that, the big video game platforms are infused with player behavior algorithms that study the behavior of such kids and use such behavior to drive them in a choice architecture to allow them to shop the products that they desire to shop. And at the end, the new face of such kind of algorithm, AI algorithms, are moving such economy to what is called intention economy. Intention is an attention deployed on time that is able to profile kids and also to drive their desire in some shaped form. Well, and that brings us to the last question, what we can do. I think that the first things that we have to ask to ourselves, if it's not time to recognize a cognitive and an emotional rights for the kids. Isn't it the time to have something like a nutrition fact label that make the kids aware if in the system that they are using there is applied such kind of algorithm or artificial intelligence tools that would like to handle or hack their attention, their intention, and their emotion. And secondly, there is a parent's right to know how safe is the space that they are living for the kids. I think that now it's time to act together to deploy something, such things like such kind of label to make customers much more aware of what they are facing and giving them the power to mitigate the bad effect of such kind of actors and give back free time and leisure to the children. Thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you, Brother Paolo. Thank you for reminding us that free time and leisure And the use of technological devices, of this kind of technology, must somehow be monitored when it comes to children. I leave now the floor to Mr. Michael Marek, chairperson of the Order of the Smile. Dear guests, I wish to stress a value that has often been neglected, but that is fundamental for reciprocal happiness and for the dignity of all children. That's the right to leisure and rest. It is enshrined in Article 31 of the Convention of the Rights of the Child, but it is too often restricted in a world full of inequalities. Every child, regardless of their origin, financial situation, or economic situation, has human dignity. Janusz Korczak reminded us of this fundamental principle when he said, there are no children, there are people. Education based on respect for the dignity of the child requires that we recognize their right to rest, play freely, and develop their passions. This doesn't mean we care. It means implementing the principle that every child has a value in themselves and their well-being should be our priority. While the world has made great progress in protecting children's rights, millions of children still live in conditions that violate their dignity. Children in war zones such as Syria, Ukraine, Palestine, or Yemen are losing the opportunity to experience proper childhood. Their free time is transformed into a fight for survival. Children forced to work hard in factories or fields. Those who suffer physical and psychological violence are deprived of a basic sense of security. In the face of these challenges, we wonder, how can we talk about the right to free time, to leisure, when millions of children are hungry, have no access to education, to clean water, and more? It is precisely in these difficult conditions that this right grows even more important as a symbol of hope. We must not forget that children are not just recipients of support, but also full participants of social life. The participation of children, which Korczak mentioned, consists of enabling them to express their needs and opinions. Children know best what gives them joy and the best way to rest, and it is our duty to listen to them. Poland, being the homeland of Janusz Korczak and initiator of the Convention of the Rights of the Child, has been working for years for the younger ones. UNICEF, the Order of the Smile, the Ombudsman for Children's Rights are examples of all this. The well-being of the child must be at the core of every debate. What we consider to be the well-being of the child includes not just meeting their basic needs, but also enabling them to develop in an atmosphere of safety, joy, and respect. Modern childhood takes place in a reality dominated by two contradictory dynamics: free time and so-called fast time. Their influence on the lives of the youngest is not only very diverse, but also crucial in the context. So crucial. In his thoughts and his reflections, His Holiness Pope Francis once pointed out there is true and false rest. Modern society imposes a fast pace on children, tight schedules full of schoolwork, homework, and so on. In the digital world, this also means constantly receiving notifications and pressure to be available. Children often fall victim to this rush culture, to this fast culture, fast-paced. They are overloaded with responsibilities, and they lose space and time for free play and rest. As a result, they are stressed, overburdened, and burned out. And experts are increasingly warning that this kind of pressure is depriving them of their childhood. Free time and leisure is a moment of freedom, of rest, and discovering the world at your own pace. It is not just a form of respite. It is an opportunity, a real opportunity. His Holiness Pope Francis pointed out that the modern world, while offering more entertainment, does not provide true rest. I quote, "Man has never rested as much as he does today, and yet he has never experienced so much emptiness," he pointed out. So end of quote. He pointed out that rest must not be fleeing from reality, but should be a blessing. It is impossible to completely eliminate this fast-paced time, but finding balance is essential. Children have the right to real rest and moments of free moments. These moments of leisure is fundamental for a healthy childhood that must be preserved. By giving a child the time to be a child, we allow them to discover themselves, discover their talents and passions. A well-rested child is a happy, healthy child. That is why I'm calling on us to work together to protect the free time and leisure of children across the world, from conflict zones to classrooms and playgrounds. May the words of His Holiness, the Holy Father, and the thought of Janusz Korczak lead us to a world where the well-being of the child, the dignity of the child, and the need for rest of the child shall always be a priority. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Marek, for having recalled the importance of healthy rest, because it's also creative as God's rest, who rests by creating, regenerating the world. Well, now I'll give the floor to Mr. Wang, who is the Executive President CEO of the East-West Philanthropy Forum. I have the floor, sir.
You. Your Holy Father, distinguished guests, I'm so honored to join this important and wonderful summit on children. So, I would like to share my perspective on children's right to free time and leisure. As you know, Article 31 of the 1989 UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, as the legally binding international human rights treaty, has laid a solid legal foundation for recognizing and protecting child's right to free time and leisure. However, it contains some flaws needed to be fixed. First of all, as physically, intelligently, legally incompetent or restrained minors, how can child freely and individually choose from their inside what to do for their free time or leisure without consultation or permission of their adult guardians? The ultimate goal of Article 31 is not just for claiming child's right, but for promoting child's well-being. So guaranteeing the quality and the benefits of free time and leisure to child's health and development is equally important to child's access to free time and leisure. Traditionally, child's right to free time and leisure is more likely to be jeopardized by reasons directly related to war, violence, disease, drugs, economy, or formal education. But nowadays, electronic devices, internet, and artificial intelligence are posing equal, if not greater, challenge towards child's free time and leisure. How can the balance between relaxation and indulgence be kept for child's free time and leisure? After 36 years, 196 countries have ratified Article 31, but it is reported that only 9 countries have established national level policies or strategies to implement it by 2023. So another key question emerges: how should the child's right to free time and leisure on paper be realized as a right in reality? My answers are PPP and the CCC. Although the Article 31 are mainly requiring state parties, the realization of a child's right to free time and leisure is only viable with strong private-public partnership, PPP, calling for collaborations between state parties and private companies, as well as non-profit organizations. Meanwhile, CCC, caregiver-child consensus, should be established based on legal requirement, professional research, and individual preference. Philanthropy can play a crucial role in promoting child's right to free time and leisure with the PPP and the CCC. On one hand, philanthropy can explore new methods and models to increase child's access to her or his right of enjoying free time and leisure, or to improve child's well-being through activities that add her or his free time and leisure. On the other hand, caregivers and the state parties can adopt and scale up those proven successful experiences. I would like to use China as one example. In order to save their precious free time and leisure to more healthy purposes, Chinese government has used the legal approach to control minors overburdened by formal and informal education, as well as their potential indulgence in online gaming. Since July 2021, both curricular burdens by public schools and extracurricular exam-driven tutoring by private companies have been curbed by Chinese government. Since June 1st, 2021, Article 75 of the PRC Minors Protection Law prohibits online game providers to provide services to minors between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. daily. Other Chinese laws only allow online game companies to provide 1-hour services to minors between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. on weekends and national holidays. So meanwhile, artistic and sports activities are called on to fill the vacuum in child's free time and leisure. Many philanthropy organizations take on these rare and needed responsibilities. For example, in order to increase rural children's access to more quality free time with the guidance and the coordination of China-Italy Philanthropy Forum, Beijing Lao New Brother and Sister Foundation and the Xenia Foundation jointly initiated a new program called Renaissance for Children, combining the art education and the gender equality in remote northwestern China since 2020. Meanwhile, Yao Foundation, founded by basketball star Yao Ming, has been partnering with many other foundations and non-profit organizations to promote basketball, soccer, and other sports in rural Chinese schools since 2012. So both programs are great philanthropy examples of PPP and the CCC, strongly supported by Chinese governmental agencies, and hopefully to be adopted by the Chinese government as national policies in the near future. So at the end, I want to echo, Madam Anark and Mr. Graby's calling on actions. I think philanthropy, especially international philanthropy collaboration, may be one effective way to put our actions behind our words for children. Thank you very much.
Dr. Wang. Mr. Wang, thank you for reminding us that there is a great need for an alliance between public and private spheres, an intergenerational alliance and an alliance that is international if we want to achieve the goals that we have set ourselves, namely to restore the rights of children. I now leave the floor to the Holy Father if he wishes to say something. We are drawing to a close.
Child's right to live free from violence. Il diritto dei bambini a vivere in un mondo senza violenza. Il primo pannello.
The first panel will be child labor and exploitation. I leave the floor to Cardinal Fabio Baggio, General Director of the Laudato Si Center for Training.
Was Leader Summit on Children's Rights, for giving me the opportunity to moderate this panel dedicated to the child's right to live free from violence. I would like to introduce this panel quoting the catechesis delivered by the Holy Father in the general audience on Wednesday, 8th of January 2025. I quote, "Nowadays we want to turn our gaze towards Mars or towards virtual worlds, but we struggle to look in the eyes of a child who has been left at the margins and who is exploited and abused. The century that generates artificial intelligence and spans multiplanetary existences has not yet reckoned with the scourge of humiliated, exploited, mutually wounded childhood. Let us think about this. The Gospel reveals Jesus' particular love for children, whom he holds up as a model for all those who decide to enter into the kingdom of heaven. His disciples, as well all people of goodwill, are called to make every effort to ensure that children are not robbed of their childhood and their dreams, especially by the brutality of war and the scourge of child labor. In the general audience on Wednesday, 15th of January 2025, Pope Francis reiterated his deep concern for the violence to which the little ones are exposed, listing some particularly dramatic situations. I quote, "Even today in the world, hundreds of millions of minors, despite not being at the minimum age to undergo the obligation of adulthood, are forced to work, and many of them are exposed to particularly dangerous work, not to mention the boys and girls who are slaves to trafficking for prostitution or pornography, and forced marriages. And this is rather bitter. In our societies, unfortunately, there are many ways in which children are abused and mistreated. As individuals, as a church, as a society, we are called to act concretely. Now, I am honored to introduce the speakers of this panel, starting from Philippe van Winnegem. As Chief of Fundamental Principles and Rights at the World Branch Governance and Tripartism Department of the International Labour Organization. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Your Holiness, Your Majesty, Excellencies, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the International Labour Organization, Director General Gilbert Humbo, let me first thank you for the opportunity to address this distinguished group. Children's rights are under pressure as never in recent times. 1 month ago, I had the privilege to visit one of our projects in a mine in Democratic Republic of Congo, and I met Jean-François, a 15-year-old boy who collects cobalt, who is so important for this critical device. There is today 160 million children like Jean-François in child labor. Half are in what we define hazardous work. 70% work in small-scale farming and small-scale mining. This figure comes from the ILO and UNICEF. This is a brutal and cruel injustice, and we just cannot be indifferent, as it was rightly said this morning. It is a question of living up to commitment the world has made to children. And the political will exists. 26 years ago, the ILO adopted the Convention 182 on the worst forms of child labor. In 2020, it became the very first ILO convention to reach universal ratification. It requires immediate and effective action to end abuse, such as slavery, debt bondage, the use of children in armed conflict, commercial sexual exploitation of children, and hazardous work that put their health, safety, and even their lives in jeopardy. ILO Convention 138 complements this by establishing a minimum age for work, while ensuring that children's right to compulsory education is protected. These legal protections are essential, but implementation is lacking. So let me give basically 3 messages here. First, we know the solution. We know what to do. We need very clearly universal, free, and compulsory quality education. We need social protection so that families are not obliged to resort to child labor when a family member falls sick or loses his job. We need adequate enforcement, including by having more and better equipped labor inspection. And above all, we need decent work for the parents, for the adults, so they can earn enough to send their children to school and meet other basic needs. Secondly, we need a bit less words and a bit more action to take Jean-François out of child labor. Target 8.7 of the UN Sustainable Development Goals requires member states to take immediate and effective measures to eradicate forced labor and modern slavery and human trafficking by 2030, and secure the prohibition and elimination of the worst forms of child labor, including recruitment and use of child labor by 2025, and ending child labor in all its forms. We know, unfortunately, that we will not reach the target for ending child labor. This is a moral failure that will resonate for decades to come. The hopes of tens of millions of children for a better future are seriously compromised, and whole society will be worse off as the cycle of poverty and child labor continues. But it is not a cause to give up hope. Our resolve must be stronger than ever. So this is my last and third message. We need more cooperation than ever. Government, trade union, businesses, civil society, faith-based organization, and affected community must work together. There is a huge potential to accelerate progress against child labor by improving coordination and promoting collective response. This is why in 2016 the ILO launched the Alliance 8.7, an inclusive global partnership with the mission to assist all UN member states to fulfill their commitment to achieve Target 8.7. The Alliance brings together a wide range of stakeholders to collaborate, strategize, share knowledge on innovative approach. More recently, under the leadership of the ILO DG, the Global Coalition for Social Justice has started. I truly encourage all organizations who are not already members of those vital partnerships to join. The Durban Call to Action adopted at the 5th Global Conference on the Elimination of Child Labor held in South Africa in 2020 sets out 49 concrete actions across a range of priorities. Implementation is really the key roadmap that must be done. In 2026, next year, the 6th Global Conference will be held in Morocco. It's a valuable opportunity to mobilize the global community to promote joint action at the scale requires. Let's act together to meet the commitments made to children, relegate child labor to history, and give Jean-François a decent future and enjoy these fundamental labor rights.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dana Yumaid. She is responsible for driving the ministry's international collaboration agenda. She manages intercultural relations and partnership for the ministry, working closely with law enforcement agencies and international organizations across the world. She also heads the Secretariat of the International Security Alliance. Madam, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Your All Holiness, Your Majesty, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, old friends and new. Allow me to address some of the most pressing challenges facing children globally involving violence, child labor, and exploitation. These issues continue to devastate the life of millions of children around the world. Today, we live in an era defined by rapid technological advancement. The rise of artificial intelligence and the proliferation of apps and digital platforms have fundamentally changed the way we communicate, interact, and learn. While these technologies offer unprecedented opportunities, they also bring significant challenges. Among these challenges is the increasing threat of online exploitation, particularly the sexual exploitation of children. Some cases I worked on personally included victims as young as 3 months old, victimized by caregivers and parents. We just, as single click, individuals can access limitless information and connect with others around the world. However, the same connectivity has opened doors for those who seek to harm the most vulnerable members of our communities, our children. The scale of this problem is alarming. According to the We Protect Global Alliance, in 2023 alone, more than half of 18 years old survived globally reported experiencing some form of online sexual harm during their childhood. Additionally, according to the Childhood Global Child Safety Institute, over 300 million children, 1 in 8, were victimized by online sexual exploitation and abuse in the past year alone. These figures are not just statistics. They represent real children whose lives have forever altered by these heinous acts. Each case of exploitation leaves lasting scars on the victim, impacting their well-being and development, and stay as a digital footprint online forever. Unfortunately, social media companies are not doing enough to stop the harm being done to children online. Be it child trafficking or the spread of child sexual abuse material on the platform. These platforms must be held accountable. Governments, civil society, and faith leaders must demand safer safeguards, proactive detention measures, and greater accountability. We cannot allow profit or convenience to outweigh the safety and dignity of the most vulnerable members of our society. And we also cannot allow privacy on the expense of children. As part of our mission to build a safer world for children, one group holds immense and often overlooked power: faith leaders. Throughout history, faith leaders have provided guidance, compassion, and advocacy for those in need. Today, they have a critical role to play in supporting children who have been deprived by protection they deserve. More importantly, faith leaders and communities have unique social, spiritual, and infrastructural assets that can be deployed to secure children's rights. Their reach is immense, spanning the large cities to small villages. Governments and policymakers need to reach out and work together with faith communities to secure the rights of children. Equally important is this effort are the voices of children themselves. We cannot bring long-lasting change without involving children in our discussion and initiative. In November last year, I had the honor of collaborating with Arigato International to host the 6th Forum of Global Network of Religions for Children. We hosted 600 participants from 90 countries and 35 countries representing 60 children. And I want to summarize what they said with one thing. All we want is a safe, secure, and a sustainable world. It shouldn't be impossible. There are adults around us in this world who work in different sectors that can make this happen. We need to leave narrow-minded agendas back, and we need to focus on one thing, and one thing only: righteous approaches to bringing safety, security, and sustainability to children around the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Marta Belloni. She is an Argentinian sister at the Congregation of Theresian Carmelite Missionaries. She is a professor and rector of the Colegio del Carmen y de San José in Catamarca, Argentina. Sister, the floor is yours.
Dear Pope Francis, brothers and sisters, we are gathered here to safeguard the Declaration of the Rights of the Child, asking the countries that have not yet joined to join as of this summit. In Argentina, since 1989, it has constitutional rank and hierarchy, and yet we find ourselves today with a huge gap. There's a huge gap between laws and reality. This is why the articles of the International Convention call for an organization. We should organize ourselves to fight for our children and their rights: the right to equality, right to a dignified life, right to education, right to health. Today in Argentina, social poverty is structural, and it is the cause of greater and greater and more complex, ever more complex violence in children. The violence of the abuse of power, of the state is both the main cause of corruption in the institutions that take care of children. As long as human and social rights are not educated and integrated in the states and governments, we will have to fight hard in social organizations to make sure that governments defend and enforce these principles. With this current and existing reality and the lack of protection of the children's rights, we find that Articles 34, 35, and 36 of the Convention against sexual abuse and exploitation, the smuggling and trafficking, are not complied with. So other organizations must step in. Young unemployed parents who take drugs and mistreat their children, which causes the state to take away their children who are taken to special centers. And they have also been reported on several occasions for mistreatment. In this situation of children, the law compels them to be given up for adoption after 180 days. The saddest thing is that in many family courts there is corruption in the sale of these adopted children. These are unthinkable amounts of money. Surrogacy is not only exploitation of life and human dignity. It is often an open door. It paves the way for the sale of babies on the internet. It is a new form of human smuggling through cybernetics, through the web, through IT. Children working in slums and neighborhoods in a very vulnerable situation. Many of them already aged 10 start selling drugs. Others take drugs and go out to steal. More and more of these children drop out of school. Many of them have nobody who takes care of them. Some simply leave. And there's an aggravating factor. The loss of values in society is due to the decadence. And this leads to multiple forms of violence. Children who are not educated with an integrating sexuality consume pornography starting at the age of 9. There is great fear for them. There are 12 and 13-year-old girl mothers who have to face immature motherhood. Children are sexually exploited in their own homes or sold into prostitution and trafficking. Children are stolen from clinics and hospitals. Others are abducted to be sexually exploited in pedophilia, exploited in child labor, and sent out to beg on the streets, or organ trafficking. Pope Francis a few days ago mentioned the lone case in Corrientes, with one of the possibilities being organ trafficking, which is more present than we think. It is a business involving clinics, hospitals, psychiatric hospitals with doctors, nurses, ambulance drivers, police, agents and lawyers all involved. The amount of money involved is so big that it brings about a greater silence. That is why this subject is never mentioned. So people believe it doesn't exist. Child labor in the Argentinian countryside is another reality. The most punished the families of children who are taken to Argentina to harvest tomatoes and peppers, say, for example, from Bolivia. They're called golondrinas, and they live in the fields of rich people in very poor conditions. They suffer from the abuse of agrotoxics, which have caused the death of children and abnormal births. and the judiciary is tipping the balance in the defense of the rich. Human dignity, which has been very abused by the monetary and capital interests of our countries, called us to fight for what given, and we are here to confirm that. We join the call of Pope Francis with the Jubilee of this year, 2025. We must find the way of peace with the hope that it won't be defeated.
Thank you very much, Sister.
Satyarthi is an Indian social reformer who campaigned against child labor in India and advocated the universal right to education. In 2014, he was the co-recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize along with Malala Yousafzai. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Your Holiness, Pope Francis, Your Majesty, dear sisters and brothers, I would like to express my deep gratitude at the outstart to Pope Francis for giving us this opportunity at this critical juncture where our children are facing the biggest crisis. When I was listening to the letter children have written to His Holiness, I am more confident that children of the world consider him as their friend, not as the Holy Father. And people like us also consider, who are fighting for the dignity and freedom of children, we considered you as our friend. I joined all of you in clapping everyone after every speech. This is perhaps because I have faith and trust in your concern and your action for children. But at the same time, I feel ashamed. I'm ashamed because we are failing our children every day. I'm ashamed to listen to all these data and statistics that I have been listening and talking for the last 45 years. How many children are enslaved? How many children are sold and bought like animals and lesser priced than animals? They are not statistics, they are human beings. Some years ago, as my usual work, when I rescued a group of young children from stone mining, they were all bonded labor for generations, 3 generations. An 8-year-old girl who was traumatized, I was trying to console her and others. She suddenly put her hand on my head, on my back, and asked, "Oh man, why didn't you come sooner?" It was not because she was freed that day, it was because her mother was raped in front of her eyes. And when her father tried to save his wife, he was poked with cigarettes. The girl has seen the death of her younger brother in her lap. This was the cry, this was the call of a child, not to me, but to everyone who believes in God, to everyone who believes in Constitution, to everyone who believes in humanity. We have to listen to this cry. I'm not talking and repeating all those data. We know the problems, we know the solutions. But the children who are producing wealth at the cost of their childhood and freedom. Whose children are they? Children whose cries are not heard. Innocent children were killed in Gaza, in Ukraine, in Syria, different places in the world. Whose children are they? Children who are sold and bought. Whose children are they? They are your children. They are your children. They are your children, they are my children, they are our children. If we don't have that connection and feeling with our children, the warm words are not enough. So, dear friends, we have to go deep into the problem. Rhetorics are not enough. The problem is that we are losing a sense of urgency. There is a serious deficit of moral accountability and moral responsibility, and that is growing. There's a growing gap, and that is also deepening, the gap between the problem solvers and the problem sufferers. We are not really honest to the problem sufferers. This is the problem. And the solution lies in the genuine feeling and connection and an honest urge to take urgent action. And that is compassion. And that is the reason we cannot solve these problems in business as usual manner. We can keep on sitting and coming and talking and coming with good words. But as someone who has freed 130,000 children along with his friends from slavery, me, in my country, resulted in scars in all my body, my broken leg, my broken shoulder, my broken head, my broken back. I can say on the basis of my experience, someone who was the initiator, the founder and head of two largest global movements, the Global Campaign for Education and Global March Against Child Labor, I can say that business as usual won't work. And that's why we have to dig out some solutions. And that lies in compassion. I'm not talking about just kindness, mercy, benevolence, empathy, sympathy. These are good human traits, but they are not going to solve the deep-rooted problems which have its genesis in systems and structures and institutions, and that perpetuates in itself. It is the compassion. Compassion is the feeling for the suffering of others with an inner compulsion to take urgent action to solve the problems of others as your own problem. And that is needed in the world. Your Holiness, we have globalized markets, economies, data, supply, production, constitutions, laws. World has never been so wealthy as it is today, so well informed as it is today. But our children are calling us. This is the time to globalize compassion. And that is the reason I have launched a new movement, new initiative, Satyarthi Movement for Global Compassion, to launch a new idea of compassion quotient, to measure the compassion and enhance the level of compassion in individuals, institutions, societies, and in the nations. We have to fight out this menace and all other crises through compassion in action. We have to create a culture of problem solving. Let us globalize compassion because they are all our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker is Salvatore Sciacchitano. In 2010, he was appointed Executive Secretary of the European Civil Aviation Conference. In February 2019, he joined the Italian delegation of the International Civil Aviation Organization Council. Now he is the president of the same International Civil Aviation Organization Council. The floor is yours.
Holy Father, Your Majesty, Excellency, Ministers, distinguished world leaders. The speaker on my left said, we know what to do. That's true. We all know that the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 8 has a specific targets, target number 8.7, which urges action by all countries in a global partnership to take immediate and effective measures to eradicate forced labor, to end modern slavery and human trafficking, and to secure the prohibition and elimination of the worst forms of child labor. Additionally, the UN Sustainable Development Goal 16.2 urges states to end abuse, exploitation, trafficking, and all forms of violence against and torture of children, which draws specific attention to end human trafficking. Now, you can wonder, what about ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization I represent here as a president? The International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, is a specialized agency of the United Nations for international civil aviation and is fully committed to combating these heinous crimes, actively contributing to the UN Global Plan of Action to combat trafficking in persons. There are no specific statistics regarding human trafficking in aviation, but I deeply regret to confirm that aviation, as the most efficient means of global transport, has been subverted by traffickers at a shocking scale. This is unacceptable. Consequently, every state and air operator must be prepared and take all necessary measures to prevent trafficking through their air services. ICAO's role is to guide and to help governments and aviation industries, airlines, airports, security companies to have all the tools they need. And the added value of this organization is the membership of 193 member states, so that these policies can be brought in each of them. On the basis of Assembly resolutions and the adoptions of standards and recommended practices, ICAO has adopted a comprehensive strategy for combating human trafficking in the aviation sector. This is focused mainly on preparation of the crew, pilots, personnel that have direct contact with the passengers to identify through training and tools behavior indications that could identify possible trafficking and reporting to points of contact so that this information can be immediately shared and actions could be taken. In closing, let me stress that we know that human trafficking cannot be tackled alone. Success requires a unified approach, bringing together governments, airlines, airports, civil society, and international organizations. Together, we must strengthen legislation and enforcement mechanisms, foster public-private partnerships to build resilient systems and provide victim-centered support to prioritizing their dignity and recovery. We know what to do. We must do. Finally, just one word mentioning that recently I've been contacted by the Secretary of State of the Holy See in order to establish cooperation with ICAO. The Holy See is not a member of ICAO, but the accession to the Chicago Convention, cooperation with the ICAO could promote the policies against human trafficking. I hope and will be very much available to support this process. Thank you very much for your attention.
I would like to thank all the speakers for their inspiring and passionate contribution to this panel. And so I'm giving back the floor to the chair of the summit.
Andiamo all'ultimo focus.
Now we come to the last panel, presented by Cardinal Angelo Fernandez Edina, Pro-Prefect of the Dicastery for Institute of Consecrated Life and Societies of Apostolic Life. The theme of conflicts and ecological disasters is a sensitive issue. Now you have the floor. Holy Father, Queen Rania, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, each soldier child is a cry to God. These are the words of the Holy Father, Pope Francis. The Fund of the United Nations for Children, UNICEF, estimates that over 100,000 children are currently involved in armed forces and groups in different roles, as cooks, messengers, spies, warriors, all for sexual exploitation. Said by the Holy Father, the soldier children are robbed of their childhood, of their innocence, of their future, and often of their own lives. And the Pope stresses that each one of them is a cry that goes to God, accusing adults for having put weapons in their small hands. And there are many international organizations or NGOs that always work to save these children, but the reality shows that there is a long way to go. Unfortunately, physical, psychological damage is really significant for these children, and the consequences are irreversible. In the worst cases, the future will always remain undermined, and they will never be able to recover in their lives. And then we have to take care and protect the common home. The dilemma is to understand whether we work for the culture of life or for the culture of death. Again, I quote the Holy Father, that is, either we go on not listening to the cry of the earth and we go towards further deterioration and destruction of the planet, destruction that will be our demise, and which is an offense to God, or we work for the culture of life. And so we have to be careful and listen to the cry of the earth. So we have to listen to the requests of the poor, and then we have to develop a new financial architecture that is able to meet the needs of the global south and of the countries that are severely affected by climate change, thus recognizing the ecological debt. And of course, we need a roadmap to protect our common home. And I again quote Pope Francis. In the face of negationism that experts present here know all too well, there is space for the revolution in small and daily things. And so this is why we give the floor to three highly distinguished speakers. The first is Ahmed Nassel Al-Raisi, President of Interpol. Please, you have the floor, sir.
Your Holiness, Your Majesty, Excellencies, distinguished guests,
ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to stand before you today at this significant gathering, the World Leaders Summit on Children's Rights. Before we begin, I would like to extend my gratitude to His Holiness, the Pope, for announcing the summit and for his commitment to the welfare of children worldwide. In a moment of profound urgency and moral responsibility, world leaders from governments, private sectors, and humanitarian organizations are gathering here at the Vatican. Guided by the composition and wisdom of His Holiness Pope Francis, this is not just a meeting, it's a global commitment to the most vulnerable among us. It's a reminder that every child, regardless of their background, deserves to grow up in an environment where they are loved, protected, and given the opportunity to thrive. As the President of Interpol, I am deeply committed to this mission. Interpol's dedication to fighting crimes and sexual exploitation against children is firm. Our approach, both online and offline, demonstrates a comprehensive strategy to ensure the safety of our children. Allow me to highlight some of the critical initiatives and resources employed by Interpol in this regard. The International Child Sexual Exploitation Database. This powerful platform enables law enforcement agencies around the globe to identify victims and perpetrators. By sharing information and collaborating across borders, Interpol has made a significant progress in dismantling child exploitation network. Sexual abuse and exploitation, trafficking, forced labor, and abduction are just some of the dangers faced by children around the world today. At Interpol, we work to address those crimes that have an international dimension. In 2024 alone, Interpol efforts have led to the rescue of over 10,726 identified victims across the world from situations of abuse and exploitation. These are not just numbers. These are lives transformed, future restored, and families reunited. Each child saved represents a victory for humanity, a testament to the commitment of those who work tirelessly to protect the innocents. Interpol's efforts, ladies and gentlemen, extends beyond rescue operations. We are focused on stopping offenders and preventing future crimes. By maintaining a comprehensive database of known offenders and collaborating with national law enforcement agencies, Interpol helps to monitor and apprehend those who pose the threat to children. This proactive approach is crucial in creating a safer world for young ones. Moreover, Interpol is actively engaged in initiatives to keep children safe online. In today's digital age, the internet can be both a tool for education and a platform for exploitation. Interpol's cybercrime expertise worked hard to identify and dismantle online networks that prey on children. Our efforts have led to the shutdown of numerous dark web platforms and the arrest of 4,148 identified offenders last year alone. With ongoing technology advancement and the high exposure of children to the cyber world, organizations like Interpol have a key role to play in ensuring the safety and security of these vulnerable communities. As children increasingly interact with digital platforms, it's important that we stay ahead of emerging threats and adapt our strategies to protect them. While we celebrate these successes, we must also acknowledge that the fight is far from over. Every day, countless children around the world remain vulnerable to abuse and exploitation. It's our collective duty to remain vigilant, to strengthen our efforts, and to ensure that every child is protected. In closing, I would like to stress on the importance of this summit and the theme that guide our discussions today: love them and protect them. Let us be inspired by the stories of resilience. Let us be motivated by the knowledge that our action can make a difference. Together, we can create a world where every child is loved, every child is safe, and every child has the opportunity to lead a happy life. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. Ci rivolge la parola.
I now leave the floor to Ibrahim Faltas, custodian of the Holy Land. Your Holiness, Majesty, Eminences, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I thank you for inviting me to this very important summit, because sharing information and opinions on the well-being of children is the first step on the way to peace, to truth and justice. I am a Franciscan friar, custodian of the Holy Land, that for 800 years has been guarding the holy places. For 36 years I've been experiencing the beauty and difficulties of the Holy Land. It is a holy land, but it has been always suffering a lot. I work with schools. I know the dreams of children. I know the dreams of the children who live in the Holy Land. They're the same dreams and same needs of other children across the world. Children who live in conflict areas, who live tensions. But in the Holy Land, children and youths experience the same sort of condition of their parents, of their grandparents, who once had their age. The war that has begun time ago has brought about great destruction. It has multiplied. It has multiplied the suffering of Palestinian and Israeli children alike. In Gaza, they have suffered hunger, thirst, cold, heat, the lack of medical care, the lack of education. We lacked all essential needs. We lacked essential rights. The truce, the longed-for peace may give relief to the children, but it will be almost impossible to wipe out the visible and invisible traumas that the children suffered on their bodies and in their minds. Many of them have lost their parents, their grandparents, their brothers, sisters. They have lost their points of reference that can support their growth and development. A whole lot of children were born over the past 16 months. The life that grows amid this rubble is truly a sign of hope that never disappoints us, that can really open up our heart. There are many children who have been killed over the past 16 months, and many of them did not get the chance to cure themselves and save themselves. For the second year running, children cannot go to school because the schools have been razed to the ground. 39,000 youths last year could not sit the final exam at school, and that will be the case for many other children and youths this year as well. I've talked to some of them to try to understand how I can help them even remotely. I really felt their suffering because they see no future. They are losing hope. Concurrently, however, my thoughts also go to their friends who have lost their lives. And I think about the future of a land, of a war-torn land. War destroys life, destroys nature, the air, water, the essential elements that are necessary for children to live. Let the children come to me, Jesus once said, and I feel that calls upon me as well. Jesus asked the adults of his era to open up their ways to the children. So likewise, I ask today's adults to welcome children, to listen to them. The classical image is Jesus sitting down listening to children, because to understand children we have to be on the same level, and children see the world through the eyes of truth, and truth begins from the simple views of the children. The way they look at us, we are a model for them, a life model for them, and it is up to us to be a positive rather than a negative life model. Jesus asks us today to protect children and through them to protect the future of mankind. It is our responsibility, our duty to help them grow serenely and to help them develop their talents, to allow them to fulfill their dreams and ambitions. This is a commitment, a duty that we must pursue at all levels. Every single individual must feel compelled to this duty, the duty of protecting children, starting from real experiences in families, in schools. The responsibility of policymakers, of politicians, of international organizations, they are involved as well. Peace is the key, is absolutely key for everyone, for the welfare of children. Everyone must know peace, and this entails respect for life and for thy neighbor. Children must steer clear of anything that can foster violence, hatred, and the deprivation of human rights. Let children come to me. This is what Jesus said, and I feel this as like the urge, like Pope Francis too urged us. This goes for children all across the world, Russian, Ukrainian, Israeli, Palestinians, children of all religious faiths. I think that as men and women of goodwill, we feel this need. But the strength to keep on hoping stems from the very appeal, from the very call of the Holy Father. Thank you, Holy Father. Your hospital, Bambino Gesù, welcomes and cures a lot of children who come from war zones. And these children represent that child that in that night in Bethlehem became the savior of the world. And in the heart, looking into the heart of children, I can say thank you, Holy Father.
Grazie.
Well, thank you, Ibrahim. And now I give the floor to Mr. Al Gore, Peace Nobel Prize winner, and we know him one of the first voices that were raised to say prophetically that creation was faced with great difficulties. And you have the floor, sir.
Your Holiness, Cardinals, Your Majesty, Heads of State, distinguished guests, it truly is a great honor to be a part of this extraordinary gathering. I know of no other person, Your Holiness, who could have conceived of and convened a gathering like this. It is an honor to be among all of the distinguished speakers. I've been moved by the statements today. The threat of ecological devastation, which encompasses the climate crisis and also the biodiversity crisis, is a terrible burden that we are placing on our children. Through no action of their own, they are inheriting a planet on the precipice. As you warned in 2018, Your Holiness, on the 3rd anniversary of the release of your prophetic encyclical Laudato Si, and I quote, "There is a real danger that we will leave future generations only rubble, deserts, and refuse." You have described the spiritual crisis we face as stemming in part from the willful blindness that prevents so many from seeing the way in which our economic system is driving us toward the exploitation of both people and the planet at the expense of our moral values and the future of children. Indeed, humanity was long blind to the threat from greenhouse gas emissions, in part, this driver of the climate crisis, carbon dioxide from the burning of fossil fuels, is an invisible, odorless, and tasteless gas. However, scientists and more recently Mother Nature have made the reality of the climate crisis plainly visible to everywhere as the damage yet deploying the solutions. One extremely important feature of the climate crisis that many did not really see clearly for a long time, especially prior to Laudato Si, is the now well-established evidence that a warming planet disproportionately affects the most vulnerable among us, including especially the poor, those marginalized by discrimination, especially children, infants, women, the elderly, the mentally ill, the unhoused, and agricultural workers and others who work outdoors, when the conditions for working outdoors are becoming intolerable in much larger areas of our planet. Those who have contributed the least to causing the crisis are facing its worst impacts. Perhaps those of us who are well off and comfortable in our lives are vulnerable to yet another variety of blindness. Maybe we just don't really see the plight of the poor and the vulnerable in a way that compels us to action. Once again, in your words, Your Holiness, if for whatever reason we don't really want to see, we don't see. But what we may not see, the children of our planet can already sense all around them. They feel the weight of existential dread caused by decades of inaction. We have a duty to restore their hope in the future. Children are innocent, and yet they hold the greatest burden of all as they grow up in a world of ever-increasing climate chaos. Indeed, their eyes are wide open. In 3 of the 4 Gospels, we read the story of Jesus' parable of the unfaithful servant, in which a master leaves on a journey and instructs his servant to take care of protecting the household while he is gone and being a good steward. Thieves came and ransacked the house, and the excuse given by the servant is that he was asleep. But that excuse is rejected. The Creator of our home has charged us with the responsibility of care and stewardship. We have a duty to be wakeful, not just by opening our eyes, but by opening our minds and hearts as well, and by acting to protect this earth. The unprecedented groundswell of youth activism on the climate and ecological crises we face have raised public consciousness to new levels. But to once again quote your prescient words, we must not place the burden on the next generations to take on the problems caused by the previous ones. Those that hold power today must alter our ways of thinking, and our new thinking must result in deep changes that transform our current systems of economics and politics, giving way toward a more just and ecologically minded system that puts environmental and social justice at the center of our plans and efforts. We have all of the solutions we need with proven deployment models. Some fear that we do not have the political will to implement them. But for those who doubt that we as human beings can summon sufficient political will to solve the climate crisis, please remember that political will itself is a renewable resource. Thank you.
Desidero esprimervi di cuore la mia gratitudine al termine di questo incontro.
Laudetur Jesus Christus, praised be Jesus Christ. Welcome back to this live broadcast of the first ever International Summit on Children's Rights, taking place in the Vatican. My name is Kelsey Gussie, and I'll be providing the English commentary and translation for this event. The Pope is now reading his little speech. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to you at the conclusion of this meeting on children's rights. Thanks to you, the rooms of the Apostolic Palace have today become an observatory, focused on the reality of childhood worldwide, a childhood that, unfortunately, is often wounded, exploited, and denied. Your presence, experience, and compassion have given life to this observatory, and above all, to a laboratory. In various thematic groups, you have developed proposals for the protection of children's rights, seeing them not as numbers, but as faces. Father Abraham said a phrase that I really enjoyed, I really liked. Children, look at us. It's the name of a film that's very famous. Children see us. Children look at us. They look at us to see how to move forward. All of this gives glory to God, and to Him we entrust it, so that His Holy Spirit may make it fruitful and abundant. On my part, to give continuity to this commitment and promote it through the Church, I intend to prepare an apostolic exhortation dedicated to children. I express my gratitude once again to each and every one of you. Thank you to all of you, and may God bless you. This ends the live broadcast of the first ever International Summit on Children's Rights held at the Vatican's Apostolic Palace. In establishing this day for children, Pope Francis dedicated the summit to helping and protecting millions of children who are still without rights, who live in precarious conditions, who are exploited and abused, and who suffer the dramatic consequences of wars. The theme for this International Summit was Love Them and Protect Them. And throughout the day, there were several panels who spoke on specific topics, focusing on the rights of children, including access to education, rights to a family, protection from violence, and access to resources. Advocates from all over the world and walks of life came to Rome, just as we see present Queen Rania Al Abdullah of Jordan, former Vice President Al Gore, and Magnus McFarlane Barrow, CEO of Mary's Meals.
Che ci avete proposto l'abbiamo portato in 8 punti e chiederemo di apporre una firma a tutti voi, iniziando da Papa Francesco, da Sua Maestà la Regina, dal Gore e dal Ministro degli Esteri italiano. Vogliamo ringraziare il Ministro rappresentante
all the ministers that were
del
present
G20 perché ha dichiarato stamattina che porterà la sua conclusione, Papa Francesco, al tavolo del G20. E questo per noi è
and that we will establish and carry on this work that Pope Francis has also stated during his address.
E ora Aldo legge gli 8 punti.
Now there are 8 points.
Dichiarazione finale del
We will
Summit mondiale sui diritti dei bambini.
We will continue as we hear the 8 points for the rights of children.
I diritti dei bambini sono ancora ampiamente violati.
The rights of children who are still being violated.
Nelle società più ricche vanno tutelati.
Even areas where the world is full of riches, children are violated. It should not become the norm. The phenomenon of children without rights cannot continue. Nations should assume the rights and the protection of rights.
La pace parte dai bambini e dalla loro tutela.
We need to protect the rights and the future of children.
Sui diritti dei bambini. E permettetemi solo una brevissima
Just to say
si parlava di
a quick word.
di parole che passano.
We'll speak in simple words,
Belle parole e
the beautiful words
molti di voi hanno esortato ai fatti.
many of you that have said, and this apostolic exhortation is an example that we are already moving past this summit to a commitment to continuing to protect the rights of children. Thank you. And now the Pope is signing the document with the 8 points of protecting the rights for children that this summit had spoken so much about. In addition to the Pope, we also see Queen Rania Al Abdullah of Jordan also signing this document, this commitment to protecting children and their rights. A number of the participants are joining in signing this document, also including former U.S. Vice President Al Gore. And this shows the international scope of this summit. A number of NGOs and organizations dedicated to serving children and protecting their rights around the world also took place in this event throughout this day, including Mary's Meals, a charity founded in 2002 to serving and ending childhood hunger.
E abbiamo accolto, abbiamo visto che avete applaudito agli interventi. Quello è stato l'indice, direi, di una condivisione che insieme
the applause that everyone has given is an example or is a testament to this total commitment that we all have to protecting the rights of children.
Ci guardano. Grazie. Adesso con tutti i relatori andiamo nella sala Clementina.
Now, on behalf of Vatican Media, I would like to thank our in-studio audio technician, Adriano Vitali, and Father Felipe Herrera Espilat, our audio coordinator, and all our media partners, both TV and radio, and our friends at the DYCIA who have made this broadcast possible. And a special thank you to all of you joining us from around the world and any platform. Please visit the Vatican News web portal, Facebook, Instagram, and X for coverage of all other Vatican and news around the world. Laudetur Jesu Christus.
I live in Delhi, but I work in
Guardiare storie leghi.